your point about just being hyper focused and hyper concerned about having trauma informed care for a very small subset of patients is really something that I have come to realize as well. And not just focusing on trauma informed care, but just the idea that the words that we say and the way that we talk about certain issues, because they have the potential to impart microaggressions or to be offensive to somebody, that we have to eliminate those. But there is, for this, minority population, but then there's no ability to raise concerns about a larger majority of the population who might be harmed or microaggressed or have concerns about the alternative. And so just a very personal example, one of the ways in which medical school has been very disappointing and really there's sort of like a grieving oddly like a grieving process that happened when we turned towards like our developing human lectures and learned about sex differentiation and human development and sexual reproduction, because it was in so many other aspects of medicine. When we cover cardiology or pulmonology or nephrology, they could use what I would consider as more like unscientific terminology. There were a lot of questions because they give a lot of practice questions, but there would be questions on, Zoe is a 13-year-old affirmed girl who was presenting with a rash. I don't really know what that means. I don't know if affirmed girl means that she was born a female or assigned female at birth, or so there was a lot of what I would consider like less specific terminology. But when it came to human development, where this is like very science heavy, it's it's very important that you distinguish between men versus women. Everything was reduced to this is XX genotype, this is XY genotype. And so many of the things that I consider, that I find magical about women, just absolutely incredible, wonderful things that, I mean, as a woman, I'm biased, but that women are made of and that we can accomplish with our bodies, that it was almost like that was taken away from me. And not to make it about me, but you couldn't say, you couldn't say that women's pelvic outlet is larger than men's pelvic outlet to aid in childbirth. It's that the XX genotype presents with this, and the XY genotype presents with this. And you can't, even male and female are things that typically come with like the asterisks. And, when I say male and female, it means that, I'm just referring to this genotype. It has nothing to do with gender expression. All of these disclaimers come with this. And, it really, it was very reductionist and really sad to be privy to some of this medical knowledge that is truly incredible. I mean, it is magical. If you've ever read like The Magic of Reality by Richard Dawkins, like one of my favorite books ever, that's like one of the themes is that like the more that you can understand something and more you can like delve into the science, the more beautiful it is. Like understanding how a rainbow works helps, like it makes a rainbow even more beautiful. And I went into these lectures so excited to discover how human biology is even more beautiful than I could have imagined. And there was like a real grieving process around it, because you couldn't have pride in being a woman anymore.
Nice. I see the heartbreak in your face, and I imagine listeners can hear it in your voice as well. Like what we lose when we give up our rights to use the word man and woman to mean the same thing that they meant 20 years ago and for the last many hundreds of years, thousands. I just don't know how far back English goes, but the and and how awkward it makes it to communicate, and then this erasure and diminishment of women. And even going back to things outside of the world of human development, reproduction, and sexual differentiation, even when you're talking about Zoe, the affirmed girl with the rash on her arm, when you're talking about things like that, it seems like a lot of this is designed to minimize the significance of sex differences to other systems of the body as well. I mean, men and women are our skin can be different, right? And the way that a 13-year-old going through puberty, the way that that person's body's natural production of hormones is going to impact their skin is going to be different. And it probably also matters to Zoe whether she's experiencing her own body's natural cycles of estrogen and progesterone, or whether this is a kid on puberty blockers and cross sex hormones. Because guess what? That's going to affect your skin too. Hormones affect every system of the body. So to see all of this sort of pandering at the expense of truth in the medical system is really concerning. I'm imagining that skin is one of the systems that is less affected by hormones, but I know it is affected by hormones. I know detransitioners have had skin problems. They've had problems with every system of the body. There are so many women who have gone on testosterone and it made their skin really oily, their pores really large, their skin feel more thick and coarse. There are men who's gone on estrogen who look 10 years younger because of its impact on the skin. And that's just one system of the body. It's literally the most superficial system of the body that there is. So it seems like we haven't fully faced the cost yet of this as a society because we don't know what it's like yet to have only doctors that were trained this way and the lack of information as to sex differences. But I do know that our lack of information based on real sex differences does hurt women in the long run. I can't remember where I learned about this, but I learned at one point about how, for a long time, female lab animals, as well as women, were left out of scientific experiments because our hormonal cycles make us too unpredictable. So there's this idea that, well, just use males because they're not as unpredictable. And the assumption there is that if it applies to males, it applies to females equally. And that's a dangerous assumption that turned out to be untrue. And so the impact on women when it comes to things like heart attack detection has been an issue. Crash test dummies being built to male specifications rather than female specifications. I know that our skulls are different from reading Leonard Sachs. I'm a big fan of Leonard Sachs. I love his books on gender. And, the fact that men's skulls are designed to withstand concussions better than women's skulls are, right? And then if you look at, as you were saying, the angle of our pelvis and why that matters, not only for childbirth, but for other things too. Um, it's tragic how much is being lost and that this is compromising patient care. It's putting this sort of social agenda in front of providing the best quality of care and the best information and the most modern technology to our patients.
There is markedly decreasing willingness to impart any kind of discomfort on patients whatsoever, including saying something that might be deemed as offensive to them. And it's very important to keep in mind how the words that you say can hurt someone's feelings and be offensive. But at some point, there has to be, you can't be so willing to impart discomfort on a patient that it's going to compromise their patient care. And so, for example, one of the things that we learned in medical school is not just to no longer refer to people as woman or man, or even use things like AFAB and AMAB, assigned female birth, assigned male at birth. Um, not just not using that, but even words like vagina can be offensive or traumatic for certain, say, transgender males who are very uncomfortable with the fact that they still have a vagina. So you need to use different words for it. But again, that completely negates the fact that if a doctor were to do a pelvic exam on me and to, use the term like first genital orifice versus vagina, like that would be very demeaning to me. And again, you have to open up those conversations to say, okay, like how can we be most sensitive to everybody? But you still have to be willing to impart some discomfort, because that is the nature of medicine. Nobody likes getting pelvic exams, but it isn't, some people have had horrific trauma, but it's still important that we do that, because overall it's going to be important for that patient's medical care.